All right, hello everybody. Welcome to our next unit here. We're going to spend a little bit of time here talking about the Age of Enlightenment. So today we're going to talk about the beginning of the Enlightenment and kind of some of the famous thinkers and ideas within the Enlightenment. So take a moment here to look at our objectives and standards to understand how the Age of Enlightenment began and to analyze the impact of individuals to the Age of Enlightenment. And our desired result, how did views and beliefs change during the Age of Enlightenment? Revolution to Enlightenment. During the 1500s and 1600s, scholars made advances in physics, chemistry, biology, and medicine. And thinkers of the scientific revolution also depended on reason to help them explain things. Now, it in turn led to thinking about the natural world and how those laws can be applied to society and government. And thinking about society and government, this is going to lead to the beginning of the Age of Enlightenment in the 1600s and the 1700s. So studying natural laws. Immanuel Kant, his picture right there, he was a German philosopher who I believe is saying his name, I'm saying his name right. He used the word enlightenment to explain this new approach to the reason and the world. Now, philosophers are going to use the power of human reason to uncover general laws that help shape the human experience. So in other words, looking at how people interact in society and culture and government and how those things can be applied to improve the lives of others or society and culture. Now, many Europeans began to look to reason instead of religious beliefs as well. Remember during the Renaissance and scientific revolution that people moved away from religion a little bit more, and during the Age of Enlightenment, people are going to do the same. Now, they're not going to move away from religion completely, but they're going to begin to question things more. They're also going to look at science and natural law, more so than religion and authority, and they're also going to question the rule and authority of monarchs or kings and queens as well. So the role of government. In England, there were two Enlightenment thinkers who had different views on the role of government, okay? Now the first one is Thomas Hobbes. He's the first picture up top here. That's Thomas Hobbes in the top picture there. Now he wrote the Leviathan in 1651, and in it, he basically says that if there were no government or authority, there would be chaos. He also says that people enter into a social contract, which is where they give up some of their freedoms or their freedom in return for an organized society. Hobbes also argued that people were greedy, cruel, and selfish, and that without government, like I mentioned earlier, he believes that there would just be total chaos and destruction, and that government is there and needed to protect the people from themselves and from each other. Now, John Locke, he's the picture in the bottom here. All right, John Locke supported the idea of natural rights, such as life, liberty, and property. That might sound familiar to you from something we'll discuss later on in history, or maybe from American history you might recognize that. But this idea of natural rights, of life, liberty, and property, are some of the big points of John Locke's views. Now, in his two treatises of government, he argued that people form governments to protect their natural rights, and he believed that the best government was a limited government, or a government that does not have a lot of power, and a government that was accepted by all of its citizens. John Locke also published another really big change, or a really big shocking kind of view at the time, was that government can be overthrown if it violates rights of the people. And this will be a big point of the American Revolution later on, when we talk about that shortly, about why many American colonists and American thinkers felt that it was okay to rebel against England, was because of John Locke's views that if a government violates the rights of the people have a right to overthrow that government. And John Locke also believed that people were reasonable and moral. So again, Hobbes kind of supports a strong central government more so, and John Locke is more in favor of a limited kind of small government. So philosophes in the Age of Enlightenment. France is going to see a growth of thinking during the Enlightenment, and one of the things that happens in France is we have this growth of people who are philosophes, or French philosophers, and they believe that nothing was beyond human reason. They examined ideas about laws, society, and the government, and many people also called for reforms to protect people's natural rights, like John Locke had discussed. Now, Baron de Montesquieu, he studied governments across Europe and learned about other cultures such as the Chinese and Native Americans. And in 1748, The Spirit of the Laws is published, and it explained governments across time and history. Now, Montesquieu believed the best way to protect liberty was to divide power among three branches of government: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial, and that each branch should also have the power to check the others. Might sound familiar to you as well as we talk about our Constitution and American history later on. Now, freedom of thought. Voltaire, formerly known as Francois-Marie Arouet, is probably the best known philosophe. In his writings, he targeted corrupt officials and idle aristocrats. He also wrote about injustice, inequality, and superstition. And eventually, his attacks angered the government and the Catholic Church, and he was imprisoned and exiled. Many of his books were outlawed or burned, but Voltaire continued to defend this idea of freedom of speech, of being able to say what you want about the government and against the government or against authority and things like that. And again, another view that will come into play during the American Revolution and our own formation of government later on. Enlightenment and the Encyclopedia, sorry. It took Denis Diderot years to produce a 28-volume set of books known as the Encyclopedia. Now, topics included in it ideas on government, philosophy, and even religion. There were articles by leading thinkers of the day, including Montesquieu and Voltaire, who we just talked about. It discussed freedom of expression, education, anti-slavery views, and even questioned authority and religion. Now, again, this also angered the French government. Even the Pope threatened to excommunicate anyone who bought it or read it. And although there were attempts to ban the encyclopedia, more than 4,000 copies were printed between 1751 and 1789. Now, Enlightenment and Rousseau. Now, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, was probably the most controversial philosophe. He believed that people in their natural state were basically good. Now, Rousseau felt that people were corrupted by the evils of society, such as the unequal distribution of property. And in 1762, The Social Contract was published by Rousseau. Now, he supported the idea of freely elected governments that had minimal control, and Rousseau also supported putting the community above individual interests, meaning you do what's best for your community or for your state, and you don't really worry about your own interest. He also resented forms of political and economic oppression as well. Now, you might think it was all men, but there were many women involved in the Enlightenment as well. But although freedom and equality were discussed by many, these typically did not apply to women. Many men believed women had natural rights, but their natural rights were limited to the family and the home. However, by the late 1700s, many women began to push for equality and better rights. Mary Wollstonecraft, the top picture, and Germaine de Stael, they argued how women were excluded from the social contract and from government and rights and things like that. Now, a British writer and thinker, Mary Wollstonecraft, wrote A Vindication of the Rights of Women, and in it she called for equal education for girls and boys and argued that with the right tools, women could also participate in public life. Alright, so our closure. How did views and beliefs change during the Age of Enlightenment? Think about the change of views in government, the change of views about society and equality, freedom of expression, freedom of thought, all those things. How is society changing to reflect the ideas of a changing government and changing roles in the world? Have a great rest of your day or night. Hope you have a good rest of your day or night, and please let me know of any questions or concerns, and hope to talk to you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.